remember an old lady and some sort of a cat. No, I'm not sure it was a cat.
I do believe we're eccentric.
This is ringing a bell. I think I was in the course of telling you a particular tale. The name that springs to mind is Molly Lee, and it is all rushing back now. I'm just telling you, so folklore, superstition, witchcraft, all set in Burslem.
What's the town?
It's the mother town of Staffordshire. It wasn't
A map. Staffordshire.
always.
Burslem here.
That's the
From
one.
North Staffordshire.
It's set at a time that Burslem was still a village. A conservative young lady called Molly Lee. She was born in this village in the late 1700s. She was born in sort of one of those half timber framed cottages. It was actually the dairy for the village as well.
1765.
She wasn't a good-looking baby. She was ugly. Sounds like a harsh word, but those are the words that are used in all the tales that we've managed to research. Not only good in looks, but also in temperament as well. A difficult child. But as the years progressed, she did go into the family business of the dairy. She would, from the store outside the house, sell the milk to the villagers. Villagers weren't particularly keen on Molly.
Ill-tempered.
Ill-tempered.
Ill-tempered. Surprising.
Now, the other thing that made the villagers very wary of Molly is the fact that she had a pet. And this pet was a bird. It was a bird that was black in colour. I can't tell you for sure whether it was an innocent blackbird or whether it's something a bit more gravitas, such as a raven or a rook. I couldn't honestly tell you that it was, but the bird was black, and it is said to have either lived in a dead or dying tree next to the entrance of the cottage. And came enough to actually live on and sit on Molly's shoulder, and it would sit on her shoulder while she sold the milk to the locals.
That's quite a sight.
I should think of crows.
So, it was superstitious times, all sorts of tales of ghosts, dark fairy mythology.
Times of the witch trials.
Yes, just after the witch trials, I think, but that would have still been fresh in people's minds. So the locals, they were wary of Molly, and this included the local parson. Not
Very unchristian of him.
very Christian. Yes.
Very.
This parson would spend a lot of time in the local hostelry, which I believe was the Turk's Head back then. I think it's called the Leopard Inn now, but back then it was the Turk's Head. And he would beat the strong ale, and so they were particularly fond of that. And that would loosen his tongue over the over the course of the evening, and he would perhaps start to ramble. On one occasion, his tongue was loosened so that he came right out and he accused Molly Lee of being a witch. So, like you say, witch trials were still reasonably fresh in people's minds. The locals didn't really dispute this and took up the belief that Molly Lee was indeed a witch.
Wonder she wasn't tried.
But as it is, it just perhaps changed the view of the locals towards her. She was not pleased at all, and perhaps gave the first inkling that she may indeed have some power. She dispatched her bird. This bird flew, sat on the eaves of the Turk's Head, and the minute it settled, beer just turned, became sour in taste, and instantly,
Yes, wouldn't it?
actually all the patrons of the establishment were taken ill and were mysteriously ill for a number of weeks, so the story goes. The parson was most displeased by this. He decided to take matters into his own hand and retrieved the shotgun which kept above the bar. Went outside to where the bird was perched up on the eaves, stayed on the eaves, took a shot at the bird, missed. Perhaps had one too many ales, or just his aim was poor.
That pleases me.
But it scared the bird returned to Molly, and Molly sensed what had happened, and she then is said to have cursed the parson.
Well,
Parson fell mysteriously ill.
No witchcraft here then.
Well,
indeed.
there's a second inkling perhaps, but she was indeed a witch. The parson did fall mysteriously ill for 3 weeks. And after that, I think it's safe to say the locals left well alone. So it came to pass that at the age of 65, I believe, Molly Lee passed away of seemingly natural causes. And she was laid to rest in the church St John the Baptist's in Burslem, which still stands today.
God
Have a
rest
look. Go visit it, I certainly did. Now, the story goes that the parson, shortly after the funeral, returned to Molly Lee's house just to make sure everything was secure, and saw Molly Lee sitting in her armchair. next to the fireplace, bumbling away. And when the parson entered, she turned around, pointed at him, carried on bumbling. Now you can imagine what happened next. The parson hightailed him from the house and ran as fast as he could back to the hostelry where he told other people what had happened. He then gathered 3 clergy from surrounding villages to descend on where Molly had only just been laid to rest with the view of exercising her spirit. So the 3 clergy and the parson assembled, and they first went to Molly's house where the bird still lived in the tree next to the door and managed to capture the bird. Perhaps another inkling that there was witchcraft involved.
Was it the same bird?
So bird captured, shovels taken up, descend on the graveyard, start to dig down to the coffin, eventually hit wood, bird in a cage on the side of the grave, squawking, most unhappy with where it is and what it's seen about. Utter their words of exorcism. At this point, the 3 visiting clergy wanted no more truck with this, so they climbed out the graves and left with haste, leaving the parson on his own, kneeling on the wood of the coffin which he had only recently interred himself, the bird squawking above him. So, he, in a moment of clarity or perhaps even madness, took the bird out of the cage, lifted up one of the planks of wood that was the top of the coffin, forced the bird underneath the coffin, slammed the wood.
Oh,
Alive.
Oh dear.
Poor creature.
Shocking. It is safe to say, quite a racket ensued. The parson ran. And then hostelry perhaps to take some more of the strong ale that he did.
He needed
But
us and all that.
once he gathered his thoughts, he took one final action, and this is a significant one, and this is the crux of the story, if you like. Instead of Molly being buried east to west, as in a typical Christian burial, he ordered that the coffin be reinterred on a north to south angle. It's a most unpleasant business, but it seemed to do the trick, or so he thought. I urge you all, actually, to pay a visit to St John's, the Baptist Church in Burslem, and you will notice that one grave stands apart from all of the others because of its alignment, and that is the unmarked tomb of Molly Leigh. Superstition is still rife. There's tales that if you run around the coffin 3 times, Molly Leigh will indeed come out and chase you. The hostelry, the Turk's Head, is the same hostelry that is now the Leopard Inn, reputedly most haunted place, and said to be haunted by the spirit of Molly Leigh also.
A bar full of spirits.
The middle of the 1800s, in a town called Hanley, there lived a young man whose name was Ned Saunterer. Yes, it's a real man. Yes. Now Ned Saunterer was a travelling salesman, itinerant peddler, if you like. He was. Yes, indeed. And I must say that whilst at that time most of the peddlers would travel in groups because they were dark, frightening times, people were very superstitious, crime rates were high.
No.
However, Ned Saunterer preferred his own company, and he would travel alone, accompanied only by his donkey, whose name was Daphne. Charming, isn't it? Ned and Daphne would travel, they would get pots, plates, cups, so forth, from the factories, and they would go to neighbouring towns and villages where they would sell their ware. And one such town, and their favourite place, I have to say it was Ned's favourite place, I have on good authority, was the town of Cheadle, or Cheadle. And it was their Yes, that's it, it's just here.
Yeah.
So he would go to this town, laden with his cart laden with his wares, and he would go to the market. The market was a wonderful place. There was all sorts of people there. There was the local produce, of course, the bread, milk, eggs, and so forth. The tradespeople, the chain makers, the ironmongers, all these. But Ned's favourite stall, his favourite stall of all, was the African man. Some said a shaman. We're not sure. Some said shaman. Who had the stall that sold the animal horns, pelts, exotic items, very strange, mysterious things. And this was Ned's favourite store. Anyway, as I said, dangerous times, and of course people had to think of what they could do to make themselves safe and keep themselves safe. For instance, on his way home from Cheddle to Hanley, Ned would have to pass through the town of Bucknell. Yes, it's on the map. And they would take a shortcut through a graveyard. Now, on this particular night, and I have to say, although it was a full moon, strangely, the moon seemed to cast more shadow than light. Yes. And into this very, very dark graveyard, there came two brothers, whose names were Abel and Needy. And I have to tell you that these two scoundrels were resurrectionists.
Really?
Yes.
Digging for cadavers.
Digging for cadavers. Indeed. And a very pretty penny they would make by selling these cadavers to the local doctors.
Unsavoury trade.
Indeed, unsavoury indeed. Now, they'd come across this grave. Inside the grave, a poor young woman who had died in childbirth, and her baby with her also. And those rascals, they dug down through the soil, and they were going to get this poor woman out of the ground. As they lifted the lid of the coffin, they heard a sound, a scraping sound of chains being scraped over stones. They said nothing. They heard, but they said nothing. They carried on. As they put their hands beneath the poor woman to lift her out of the grave, they heard a rasping sound like breath being drawn over sharp, dry lungs and dragged out of a grim, leathery throat. They exchanged glances, but still said nothing.
Harden the characters.
Barely hardened dirt. As they lifted the woman from her coffin, they suddenly felt as if the sides of the grave were coming in upon them, and they heard a most unholy shrieking sound, and there they saw the very face of Satan, with red, fiery, burning eyes gazing down upon them. Those two men, I don't mind telling you, couldn't get out of that grave fast enough. They scrambled and clambered and out they got, indeed, and they ran into the distance.
Yes.
Didn't look back. But if they had looked back, I don't mind telling you, they'd have seen something rather amusing. A donkey. Indeed. Our Daphne, with a mask from the very African stall of which earlier I told, on its face, and a couple of large horns. Tied to Daphne's feet were some chains. Now Ned had very cleverly thought, if I dress my donkey up in this garb, that anyone tries to attack us on the road,
Be frightened away.
Exactly. Well,
This might be a fearful sight.
indeed. So when they were taking a shortcut through the graveyard, Daphne inadvertently almost slipped into the hole, and this is what sent the side of the soil coming down onto the two men, and they looked up. So we know how all this happened, and we know why it happened. But there's one element that we don't know.
What's that then?
That is why Daphne, the donkey or the mask, had red, burning eyes.
You mentioned the shape.
There was a shame in it. Potentially, we think. We don't know, but it did not seem to be something that could be explained.
Inexplicable story. Very good. It brings to mind a tale I have of another peddler.
The tale of Ward of the Brook. A peddler from the north of the county in Leigh.
The peddler,
Right, yes, peddler, right up here right up in the north of the county, right on the borders of Derbyshire.
Oh, marvellous. Yes.
Now, as my learned friend has pointed out, peddlers generally would travel together for safety.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this particular time, Ward was travelling alone, and he became disorientated. as the mist fell over Gradbach, which it often does. It's a bleak and miserable place. When the weather turns, it's not a place one would want to be alone, and it's full of very deep ravines.
Like Ludchurch?
Ludchurch. Yes, absolutely, Ludchurch. This time he was probably travelling from Macclesfield back to his home in Flash, where he lived, which, as we know, is the highest village in England.
1,318 feet.
I do believe he's correct.
Yes.
Anyway, the fog fell and the weather turned. Poor Ward thought he dare not carry on, although it was only probably 4 or 5 miles to his destination. He came upon a little hostel in the little village of Gradbach by Caster's Bridge, otherwise known as... He'd heard tales in this area of lone travellers going missing, and this had happened for many, many generations. And people always put it down to the fact, of course, that there were these dark ravines and places where people could fall to their death and very deep forests. And quicksand, probably.
Quicksand?
Yes. Well, there was certainly peat bogs. He knocked upon the door, and a great, huge, bearded man answered the door. A giant came up. Yes. Probably, at the time, probably 6 foot tall. And at its side, a great mastiff of a dog, which took Ward by surprise. But the landlord was joined by his wife, and he could hear children in the background. And so they said, please come in and join us and have a pint of ale and stay for the night. So he was felt reassured there was children in the building.
And the pint of ale surely was tempting.
Very welcoming. Very, very welcoming. And he sat down whilst drinking his beer. One of the small children came up to him. Now let me tell you about the children.
Oh.
They somewhat pale.
Oh dear.
And a sort of a peculiar look about them.
Poor diet.
Yes, possibly poor diet, and possibly the fact that they'd lived there for many generations.
A certain amount of inbreeding?
Anyway, the small child said something most queer.
Really?
Yes, she said, you've got really big hands. They'll make excellent pies. Ward thought a peculiar thing for a child to say, but put it down just perhaps a child playing games. And he laughed it off. Ward finished his pint and decided to retire to his bed. Not unexpected. So he retired to his bed and the family was still up, but he could hear them in the background. Then he heard something most macabre and sinister. Another child's voice said, will the queer old man be dead yet? The oven's getting hot and the pot's boiling. At this, Ward felt increasingly uncomfortable.
I'm not
And
surprised.
thinking back on the tales he'd heard and the rumours of lone travellers going missing with no explanation, he decided he feared for his life and he must make his escape. So he spied the door, as anybody would, and ran for his life, crossed the carpet, scarped out of the door and down the hill as fast as he could. Perhaps he was going to be okay, for he could hear the roars and shouts of the family. If it was just a guest leaving, why would he be angry? And they took chase, bringing out the dogs, the great slavering mastiff, chasing him down the hill, and he could see their torches behind him in the distance. Ward realised he could never escape them or outrun the dogs. He had no choice. So, fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, he came upon the Black Brook and climbed into its waters where it meets the River Dane and climbed under Caster's Bridge. He took an inch underneath, he crawled into the water, praying that the brook would wash away his scent. He heard the family nearing and the roaring dogs and the barking. Fortunately, they must have lost his scent. Grumbling and moaning went back to their abode of miserable life. Malnourishment, no doubt.
Dinner for them, no pies for them.
Ward, when he felt safe, crawled out from under the bridge, sopping wet. He set foot as fast as he could back to Flash. Now this was a time of no police or whatever, so it was down to the local garrison to report what he'd heard. Soldiers at the garrison thought, what a lot of nonsense. But these were fresh and had come back from fighting in the north, in Northumberland. So they were battle-weary troops. They decided to check this out and took to their horses and rode down to Gradbach, past the mill. Upon entering the house, the hostelry, they instantly recognised the smell of burning flesh. And in
Human flesh.
human flesh, no doubt. And, more than that, the bones of victims scattered around the fireplace, which poor Ward in the dark had not noticed himself.
These were people they'd already eaten.
Yes, yes.
Skin.
The family were duly rounded up. The hostel was burned down. Upon further exploration, many shallow graves were found around about in the little glade by the cottage.
All those travellers.
All of those travellers.
All of those peddlers.
The family were sent to the gallows for their crime.
Even the children.
And they all swung. Legend has it that remnants of the house still exist in a little glade of Grabback's Mill.
Really?
Well, it reminds me of a story from the moorlands. The roaches. Shall we look at the map?
Oh, yes.
Exactly, the roaches. Bleak, sinister place. The roaches, most prominent part of a curved ridge that runs for several miles from Encloud in the south to Back Forest and Houndstone in the northwest. The ridge is formed of a thick bed of sandstone.
Are you telling us a story or a geography lesson?
That's important.
Yeah, do get on with it, Sir Benjamin.
Here's how the Murrian Age. On a path running across the top of the roaches lies a mysterious pool, Doxey Pool. A bleak place of ill repute, avoided by the locals for generations. Legends abound, said to be bottomless and joined by subterranean channel to another nearby Lake Mere. Animals will not drink from Doxey Pool. Birds will not fly over it. So sinister. Birds will not fly over it, nor will they settle upon its surface, and the locals avoid it whenever possible. Also, it is said to be haunted by a malignant water creature.
Malignant?
Jenny Greenteeth. Tales of Jenny Greenteeth begin in the 17th century. 1649. Young woman of the area, one Eliza Paget, rebuffed a rich local landowner, Joshua Linnett, enraged by her refusal to engage with him. Linnett accused poor Eliza of witchcraft. Despite there being no evidence, the girl was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to death by drowning in Doxey Pool. As the sentence was carried out,
Poor girl.
with very nearly her last breath, she cursed it.
Good for her.
I would kiss him.
3 days later, they found Joshua Linnett's dead body lying on the banks of Doxey Pool, his face and throat torn asunder as if by claws.
Once more, maybe a hint of witchcraft.
The locals decided that what had happened was that the wronged girl's spirit had committed the murder. And from that day forward, a strange creature made regular appearances. Came to be known as Jenny Greenteeth. The appearances of Jenny Greenteeth in Doxey Pool carry on through the centuries. The most recent one being 1949, a mere 26 years ago. Phenomenal. The story from 1949 is as follows. Two women, Florence Pettit and Mildred Spragg, were on a walking holiday in Staffordshire moorlands. Interested in folkloric tales of the area, they investigated some of the sites where the tales were reputed to have taken place. When they came to Doxey Pool, Mildred Spragg decided that she would see if it was indeed bottomless and waded out into the water. What happens next, I will quote from the eyewitness account given by Florence Pettit to the Moorlands Examiner, the local newspaper. There was a turbulence in the surface of the water, and a great thing arose from the middle of the lake, rose to a height of 25 to 30 feet, seemingly to be made from the slime and weed and water itself, but with eyes, malevolent, glaring eyes.
25 feet, you say?
Reached forth a clawed hand, grabbed Mildred round the neck, dragged her beneath the surface of the water, then submerged again itself seemingly to dissolve back into the very elements from which it had been formed.
Good God.
I say.
Florence Pettit fled post-haste, ran all the way to the nearby town of Leigh, where she told the local people. No one believed her. The police made a cursory investigation, but could find no evidence to corroborate her story. Grief-stricken at the loss of her friend, and faced with the ridicule and scorn of a disbelieving public, Florence Pettit went completely mad. She was committed to a sanatorium where she spent the rest of her days.
She's probably still there now.
Maybe she was a madwoman. But one thing we can know for sure. From that day to this, Mildred Spragg was never seen again.
Yes, that sounds like what has been described as an inland mermaid, or perhaps a mermaid.
A mermaid.
Yes.
A good thing it could be an undone pool.
And now? Yes, well, there's lots of good places to visit, aren't there? We should definitely get our nuts back.